It's time for Policy Nuance with State Representative Mark Batinick, who joins us live in our WJOL studios. We do this every Wednesday, and we encourage your questions. We'll give you an email address here in just a couple of moments. Today, we're going to be talking about violence in Chicago. We're going to talk about a COVID update. Keith Wheeler, state rep out of Oswego, is going to be stopping by. And we have Debbie to give us some information on some really cool stuff that's going on. Representative Batinick, good to see you, sir.
It is good to see you. Welcome back.
Yeah, I was off last week. You guys killed it, I heard, right?
We took the training wheels off. I'm more than happy to have them back on, actually. So a little nervous, but yeah, definitely happy to be back on.
Yeah, I am your live-breathing human comfort blanket.
Safety net.
Safety net is good. We can do whatever. So we got a lot to get to here today. We're going to jump in here in just a couple of moments, but man, is it a crazy week nationally? I am watching all of the stuff go on with the infrastructure bill, with reconciliation. Boy, man, most Americans, I'd say 98%, have no idea what's going into that bill, and that's scary. There's a lot there, man.
It's interesting. I was actually talking to my chief of staff. It's great that you brought that up. The so many little nuggets, I guess you can call them Easter eggs of our Christmas presents of spending are in those bills, and those are some of the things that we find in the bills in Springfield. Obviously, I'm not following the DC stuff because my worry is what's going on in Springfield, but it's so often the fact that we find out things were in the bill long after. I think the Capitol bill was a perfect example. Mm-hmm. I think that was passed in 2019 when we found out that trailer fees. I voted no, folks out there, but trailer fees went from $18 to $118. And actually what happened in the end with that, they lost about a third of the license plates because people just stopped. They either sold the trailer, stopped buying it. I mean, you think about the little Boy Scout troop that has a trailer that sits there. They use it 1 week a year, right?
Right.
People just stop foregoing getting a license plate fee. So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of things like that. It doesn't surprise me that D.C. is not that much different than Springfield, but you know what? We're gonna work to turn that around.
I don't have it in front of me. Did you see the Facebook post from a guy at a bank? The name of the bank escapes me right now, but the president of the bank sent a letter out to all of his accounts and all of his customers saying, look, coming up soon, you may get, the federal government may get alerted every time you do something $600 or more. Write a check for $600 or more or deposit $600 or more. That's apparently part of this bill, increasing the size of the IRS. So, again, the name of the bank escapes me right now, but have you heard about this?
Yeah, I did not hear about that little aspect. I did catch a bunch of conversation on the one cable news show I watch is CNBC. I'll kind of have it on in the background. It seems to be shoot it straight down the middle, and they must have been referencing that. I didn't catch the Facebook ad, but they must have been referencing that. I think the issue there is I think simplification would be an easier solution. We have such a complicated tax code.
Sure.
I think when it comes to doing things like that, that's one of those situations where I think simple works best. And I would frankly like to see something like that in whether it be the state tax code or the federal tax code, so that it's a little bit more black and white. You don't need to have, whoever the people looking at every single transaction. But,
that's kind of scary. Kind of scary. All right, so let's jump in. Again, this is Policy Nuance with the State Representative Mark Batinick, Mark from the 97th District. Let's start today, if you don't mind, with the violence in Chicago. We discuss it on my morning show frequently. It never ceases to amaze me. We did a story this morning about Norridge. I know it's a suburb, west side of Chicago.
Right next to it. I mean, it blends in with the city.
You heard about the Ulta beauty store on Saturday or Sunday at 2:30. Dudes come walking in, smash and grab, and everybody stands there and watches it.
Yeah, I just posted that video on the Facebook page.
Oh, good.
The update for this. And remember, your questions, you could send your questions to illinoisquestions@gmail.com, illinoisquestions@gmail.com. And I don't know, I had to ponder this for a while. They said that just a few hours earlier, there was a heist at the Old Navy store in the same strip mall. But here's the crazy part. They said it wasn't related. So the scary part is this. I started thinking about it, and I was like, okay, so is crime so rampant that there's a bunch of a bunch of different groups doing things? Would you almost feel better if it was one group that just went in and did a big heist and moved on? But it's so rampant that it's two separate groups just a few hours apart that are doing these crimes. You know, the whole soft on crime thing is disturbing. I don't even. We talked about it, I think, on one of my first episodes. Kind of some of the decriminalization, the expungements, some of the drugs like fentanyl and heroin that they wanted to make misdemeanors for having. And I got to tell you, I get pretty emotional when I talk about things like fentanyl. With I have 5 kids.
Yeah.
Hopefully 3 are kind of aging out of when they would be at a higher risk for that, but I still have 2 left. And if you start making things like fentanyl a misdemeanor to have, I don't think that's going to make our streets safer. It's certainly going to not make my teenage daughter and soon to be teenage son any safer. So we definitely have to take a different approach. There was an article I saw yesterday. Carjacking cases skyrocket in New York City. All right, and they're freaking out about it. And I want to say they're up. There's 324 reported so far for this year compared to 179 last year. Now, this is New York City.
New York City, 300 and some.
324.
Okay.
And I want to say, maybe Deb can look this up on, there's a website called Hey Jackass that has the murder rate, the shootings, and all that stuff. I want to say it's over 1,000 already in Illinois for carjacking.
It is.
So the situation is this: it's over 1,000 in Chicago, not Illinois, in Chicago. They're freaking out. 324 in New York. New York is 3 times the size of Chicago. So to put that into perspective of how much worse the problem is here versus a place like New York, and they're having serious issues with it. And they have. I think I posted this on my Facebook page underneath the article. I will. Deb's nodding yes. If I haven't posted, I will. But I think she's saying yes. And it's interesting because I actually thought I had a foolproof plan to stop from being carjacked. I thought I did. And I think I talked to Debbie about this offline. I drive a 2007 Honda Odyssey minivan. And I'm like, no one's going to carjack that.
No one wants that.
No one wants that, 220,000 miles. But in this article, there's a story about a 26-year-old was driving a 2010 Honda on a busy road in Brooklyn. According to cops in their surveillance video, 2 thieves approached the driver as he sat in the parked car in Clinton Hill, asked for them, then flashed a knife and ordered the motorist and pal out. Once they did, 2 other vehicle vultures emerged, and the 4 took off in the stolen vehicle. So, you're not safe in any vehicle.
No,
you're not. And as I thought about it, and this is kind of a mistake that I've made in the past, and probably a lot of people do. People think you're going to steal high-end cars, right? Mm-hmm. The reality is, a lot of times when people are stealing cars, they're stealing cars for parts that are models that are used a lot, or they're stealing cars that they're going to use in another crime.
Sure,
maybe a shooting, a gang fight, something like that, and a 2007 Honda Odyssey minivan is actually a little conspicuous and carries a lot of folks, right?
Yes, it does.
So it's scary what's going on with the carjackings. And then I think this weekend was an extremely deadly weekend.
Yeah.
And I think yesterday was even, maybe it was Monday, was even worse. I want to say 58 shootings, 8 dead.
Yep.
59 shootings wounded. This is on the Facebook page as well. 8 killed in a weekend of gun violence. And this is where I want to get into the stats a little bit too. So we are many times more the murder rate per 100,000 of, say, New York or LA. Mm-hmm. And people want to use the excuse like, well, Chicago's nowhere near the top of murder rates of cities in the United States. That is correct, but that's also playing with statistics.
And playing with numbers.
And here's how. Do you want to compare ourselves to Flint, Michigan, or even St. Louis, which is a tenth of the size? Is that how we look at the city of Chicago? Or are we going to look at the city of Chicago on par with LA and New York? I think most Chicagoans, most Illinoisans, most people here would look. I think Keith Wheeler's just entered the building. I think most Illinoisans would look at Chicago and they would say New York, LA. They wouldn't look at Chicago and say, we're going to compare ourselves to St. Louis or Flint, Michigan. What happens in a town that's let's take St. Louis, that's 300,000 people. If you just have one bad area, one bad neighborhood, it's really going to skew those statistics off the charts. And we just can't be. We can't be doing that. We need to do better. So I recommend everybody look at that Hey Jackass website. It's a great website. It just tracks it. It's all data. and really be safe out there. It's interesting. I got something sent to me this morning. I don't know if you saw this. The city in 456 buildings, put up on my website, is now putting in kits to help shooting victims from bleeding too much.
You're kidding me.
No.
In Chicago.
In Chicago, I think it's 456 buildings.
Bleeding control kits.
Bleeding control kits.
Wow.
In a reaction. Now, they're saying that this is a reaction to mass violence, like maybe mass shooting, but I think, and it gives me pause. It's one of those things where sometimes we get criticized for, and I do like to talk about all the great things in Illinois. I think Chicago is and should be a world-class city. Mm-hmm. Certainly going to get into some stuff there. I think it's a great state. It has a lot to offer, and we get accused of being negative, and you can't fix the bad things unless you're willing to talk about them. I don't know what your thoughts are, but when you have shooting victim kits, is what they're called, Debbie. If you have shooting victim kits,
bleeding control kits
in buildings around I'm not sure that's the type of advertising you want to put on your, come to Illinois tourism commercial.
Are they right next to the defibrillators? Are they right there? I would
assume. I saw the video, but defibrillators. Look, that's obviously
very needed. Yes,
very needed, and kind of out of your control. So I don't want to talk too much about this. I've been talking with Paul Vallis and his team. Paul Vallis actually ran for mayor previously. He works on some anti-violence stuff. He ran for governor. I want to give him a hard time because in I think it was 2002, whenever Blagojevich ran, he ran against Blagojevich in the primary. He lost by literally like 1,000 or 2,000 votes.
Wow.
And I'm going to give him a hard time. I'm going to be like, Paul, man, where would the state be if there was a couple thousand more votes in that primary way back when, about 2000, 2002? But so we're going to get into that. When we can get Paul on the show, we're going to do a little bit more. He really addresses the violence in the city, and he works for some nonprofits and has some good programs. He's definitely one of those independent thinkers. But while we're talking about the city of Chicago, I got a question. We have State Representative Keith Wheeler in the room. Say hello to everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Might need to get a little bit closer to that microphone.
There you go.
Does everybody know the three best things about September? Anybody want to know what the three best things about September are?
You sent this out on your Twitter.
3 best things about September.
I'll just wait so there's not too much dead air. I'll get into it.
Do you already know, Debbie, or not?
He put it on his Twitter, but I forgot.
The number one best thing is it's still warm enough during the day to swim.
Okay.
It's cool enough at night to either open the windows or have a fire. And the Bears have not been eliminated from the playoffs.
Oh, boy. That's a critical one right now.
So, Keith Wheeler in the house. Obviously, some of the big news coming out of, we're talking about the city and violence and some other things. I want to quickly transition. He's a huge Bears fan. He
That's true.
Took my son to his first Bears game. Me and my son to his first Bears game, and my son's been hooked. But we'll just get right into it. We want to talk about JCAR, which is what does the acronym for JCAR stand for, Keith?
The Joint Committee on Administrative Rules.
Yeah. By
By far the most attractive, sexy-sounding committee you could ever want to be a part of.
You got stuck with that one, didn't you?
I actually asked for it.
Really?
But what do you any quick thoughts on the Arlington Heights purchase agreement?
I think it's kind of exciting. The Bears have a great home in Soldier Field, and we have an amazing fan base. But you think about that fan base is packed into 61,500 seats, which is the smallest stadium in the NFL right now. So I'm looking forward to expanding that perhaps and bringing some more of our friends along to enjoy a great tailgate party and then host some winning football. It's a little Justin Fields-led winning football. Let's key on that.
They might want to roll him out once or twice.
Yeah, maybe a little backside help. All kinds of things you could do there.
Yeah,
screen pass once, maybe twice.
Yeah.
Let him watch for a while longer.
Yeah.
With this bad offensive line, let Andy Dalton get beat up.
Yeah.
And
Or
save
Nick.
him. Or Nick
Foles.
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
actually. Well, hey, he's got a ring.
Yeah, and Super Bowl MVP to go along with that.
That's right.
Nick's got a ring. So to fill the audience a little bit, Keith is actually my roommate down in Springfield. So we did a little bit of an inaudible using the football analogy here with the show this morning. So I didn't have much time to lay the ground rules out for Keith. So to let you know, Keith, this is going to work exactly how it does when we're talking about policy down in Springfield at our house. I'm going to do most of the talking.
and I do most of the pushbacks. This should be fun.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely wanted to have you on the show to talk about, because JCAR is almost nobody knows about it, but it's a really important committee, and talk about some of the things that have been happening. I've been asked some of the questions about with Pritzker and the mandates and his rules by executive order. So I'm going to actually give you the floor for a little bit and pretend to try to not jump in.
So, all right, so I'll lay the groundwork for what JCAR is, because it's again, the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. And administrative rules are kind of the piece that follows along. When a bill gets passed and signed into law, you have a statute then. But oftentimes that statute says to an agency, hey, you need to put together some rules so that people can follow exactly what you're going to do that don't need to necessarily be in statute, something that can be more, changed more easily. And that's what the rulemaking process is. But what JCAR's role in that is, we're a bunch of legislators. There's 12 of us. And it's the only evenly divided committee that we get to do within Springfield. So I'm
going to interrupt you, Audit Commission.
Okay,
which I'm on, but go ahead.
This is committee, not commission. We actually do things.
Okay.
So
you gave him the floor.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, this is the pushback we talked about before. So there are 6 Democrats and 6 Republicans, made up of 6 senators and 6 representatives. There's one Senate Democrat co-chair. That's my good friend, Senator Bill Cunningham. And there's a House Republican co-chair, and actually I fill that role. So it's, again, evenly divided. We meet 12 months out of the year. This is something that doesn't get to take a day off, and there's no virtual meetings. So we have to be in person. And we have to work together in order to accomplish real things and give ourselves some latitude to push back on the administration. When we feel that an administrative rulemaking, now administrative rules have the same weight as a statute, so they have a lot of power. And when we believe that the administration maybe has gone too far or colored outside the lines a little too much, we have the ability to prohibit a rule or to suspend an emergency rule. And I'll talk about emergency rules in just a second, because that's what we're really going to talk about now when it comes to this pandemic response. But the collaborative nature of JCAR is that you have to have 8 members join together, which means it has to be bipartisan in order to stop something from happening. So, again, it's very collaborative in its nature, and all 12 members are not afraid to speak their mind. So our meetings can go a little lengthy sometimes, but that's great.
Well, they're generally, look, these aren't backbenchers that are on JCAR, right? These are serious people in the leadership group for the most part, I would assume.
So put it this way: my Democratic co-chair, Senator Cunningham, is the president pro tem of the state Senate. One of his colleagues, Kim Lightford, is on JCAR. She's the Senate Majority Leader. So these are not, like you said, people that are just don't
or the
have,
House Republicans.
We've got Deputy Leader Tom Demmer and Steve Reich, who is a policy wonk. He's a perfect person to have on JCAR.
Good. Okay. So what's going on with? I mean, we've had so many. How many of our questions have been about how I've talked it ad nauseum about how does the governor get away with doing 21 months now of executive emergency orders, and you guys pushed back a little bit finally, I think, recently.
Yeah,
so.
well, it'd be helpful for people to see what happened last year, kind of as the story of how JCAR has some ability to push back on things. So if you think back to last year, we didn't know what was happening in the pandemic world to the greatest degree. The governor comes out and he wants to put an emergency rule out that's going to effectively make anyone who's violating one of his executive orders regarding, people being open for business, and that emergency rule applied to the statutes that already exist for the Department of Public Health. And what that meant was that if someone was going to be open to have their nail salon or even do nails in their own house, they would be subject to a Class A misdemeanor, which would be up to 364 days in jail and up to $2,500 in fines per day. So those are kind of a really heavy-handed approach. And the members of JCAR got together after that emergency rule was filed. And emergency rulemaking, by the way, once the administration files an emergency rule, that is in effect immediately. The only pushback that can happen on that emergency rule is through JCAR or through a court. But JCAR is going to be the much faster way to handle it.
It's going to be way quicker. And usually in a situation like that, when people are on their wits, just trying to make a living and not have their doors shut.
Right. So that got filed on like a Friday afternoon, and I got wind of it that Friday afternoon and went, "This is a really bad idea. Please don't do this. Well, we already filed it. In that 4 days between that and the next JCAR meeting, our office received over 10,000 phone calls, which we answered 2,000 of directly, and many times that email from across the entire state.
Right, and that's one of the things about JCAR is you're getting it from the entire state.
I'm getting
whole
it from
state. Mostly the 97th. Every now and then we get it from everywhere else. But shout out to Ben Markham, who hopefully will listen to this because he's actually the one answering the calls, not you. He's chief of staff.
I'll hat tip also to Mary Wallace in my Springfield because she's the one who takes the brunt of those other calls that see the 217 area code and think they're calling the Capitol. And they're right, they are. So the bottom line is this. The members of JCAR got together before the meeting and said, we're not going to go for this. And the Democrats got together and pushed back very hard at the governor. And before the meeting actually officially began, the governor withdrew that emergency rule. And what happened instead then was 2 months later, actually 3 months later, the administration came back with a much more reasonable approach to that particular way of trying to get businesses to do the right thing in their mind without that heavy hand. And so it turned out much better, and JCAR had a role to play in that. Now, fast forward to today, when we've got the school mask mandate has taken up a lot of JCAR attention over the last couple of months here. It feels like the last couple of years it's been so intense with what's going on with that. And everywhere I go, I get asked about that. So at the previous JCAR meeting, which was just a few weeks ago, we sat down as a group, and my perspective was that the administration, with the way that they were going to unrecognize school districts because they weren't going to follow the mask mandate, were actually enacting policy outside of rule, which means you have to have it in rule to be to be able to punish someone. And this was a case where that wasn't in rule; it was in guidance. And the administration is pointing to a court case that they won last year that says that we can do this. And I said, no, you're still outside of the bounds of rulemaking. If you want to put this in emergency rule form, that's different. That takes my process argument away. But the process itself wasn't being followed. So my concern was that if we allow that to continue on, if we're going to let the administration dictate via guidance, then there's no point in having JCAR, and there's really no point in having a General Assembly. Because at that point in time, you're taking any kind of oversight or collaboration away. So I pushed
I would say that a lot of people are saying there's almost been no point of having a General Assembly the last 20 months, but it is good. It's maybe just JCAR's done something, but obviously the General Assembly has not pushed back at all.
No, as a body, we really have not. I mean, we're going to be in session for veto session in just a couple of weeks, and I've not been made aware of any bills that are going to come along that are going to fix some of these things. That could happen. I know some bills have been filed, but it doesn't mean they're going to get heard. We all know that.
Some bills have made it worse, too.
And some bills could make it way worse. But my role in JCAR in this case is still going to be to find a way to collaborate with my Democratic colleagues to come up with a better answer. So our answer at the September meeting was, okay, I couldn't get everybody to see my point of view the same way that I do in our briefing meetings. So we came to a compromise, which was we made a recommendation to the State Board of Education to come back and put all their policy inside a rule before the next JCAR meeting in October. And I've had a couple of conversations with people in administration, and I'm hoping that they're going to accommodate that, because I believe at the very least there should be oversight from that perspective. We should be able to see that in a rule form, and JCAR should have the ability to push back on that if we feel that's the case. Does that make sense, Mark?
It makes sense. I hope it makes sense to everybody out there. Well, I'm glad there's some pushback. Obviously, we talk about this. I think sometimes the public feels like the General Assembly isn't doing anything, and why aren't you doing anything? And I certainly get a lot of that. And one of the things that you've talked about a lot, that I've talked about in previous shows, is the whole working together thing. If you're going to get done what you're going to get done, you need a supermajority, right? So you need Republicans and Democrats. It's probably not the best time to be. It's not best to have the personality of a bomb thrower, I guess, if you're going to try and get something done, because people are people and they have personalities, and my experience has been, out of spite, they'll just, if you want something and you're just an agitator to be an agitator, they're not going to help you with it. They're not going to listen to the policy argument because they can't get past the personality, which isn't how it's supposed to be, but obviously
that plays a huge role. And almost everything we do in Springfield, there's some element of that.
Right.
So your approach matters almost as much as what you're trying to say in some regards. And that's really sometimes who you ask to take the message to the other side can get the message through or not. Yeah. And that's a big deal.
Let me jump in here real quick. What about leadership? Do they get involved in JCAR advising you, or not advising you, telling you what they think you should do?
Yes.
They do.
There's a big smile on Keith's face.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and that applies to all 4 caucuses, by the way, not just to my experience.
Right.
So, I mean, for instance, I drafted a statement that I thought we might be able to say as a body after, following a vote. It's going to say, hey, this is why we approached this the way we did it. And I was told it had to go through all 4 caucuses general counsel before we could release that. Well, that's going to take 2 weeks because, we're talking about real lawyers here that are going to review every single comma and, all the punctuation in the whole statement. And that's not what I was trying to do. I was trying to help everybody out by saying, here's a unified statement that we can present that will, explain why we did what we did and protect everyone's best interest going forward. But again, process and lawyers slow that down from all 4 caucuses.
Right. So what do you foresee happening with the rule with the masks, and what do you see the State Board of Education doing then? And when is the next JCAR meeting? Is it the first or second week of veto session?
Actually, it'll be the first week, the first Tuesday of veto session. I think that's the 19th.
I believe so, yep. And I think that means they're probably going to cancel the second week.
There's some rumors to that effect.
Yeah. So this is how you can deduce what's going to happen in Springfield. So there was an invite to the Irish caucus party for the 19th. And I'm like, oh, that means that they're not canceling the 19th or 20th. And then that's when JCAR is, right? So then you can, and there's not a lot to do. And you read the politics into this. The Democrats don't really want us down there a lot if there's not a lot to do, because that's when trouble happens. Get in, do the congressional maps, get out, maybe one overnight, 2 days. And that's I'm guessing. We'll see if it comes true, but I'm guessing that's going to. You have any other?
No, I haven't heard. But maybe next week we'll start getting the real, I think, skinny on what's going to happen. What other measures might be coming our way as people start to count noses to see if they have enough votes to actually get something passed in a very brief time. It's veto session, right? Mark, how many vetoes do we have to deal with so far?
Not many, but we do have to deal with 71 votes for a map. So they're going to have enough of the Democrats there for that. So I imagine wrangling them up for 2 weeks is going to be harder than wrangling them up for 1. So I imagine it'll be 1. But
yeah, I mean, help me remember, Mark. Do we have remote voting after veto session starts?
I think that's when it ends. Actually, I thought we had.
That's what I mean. I think we have to have people in the room now.
Right. So, let's pivot to something else. You feel free to jump in on a topic that you think is important. Is there anything you brought to the table? I certainly have a couple of things.
You lead. This is
process. Your role, my role down in Springfield. How everything works. A favorite story. I can think of one story that you really appreciate that kind of tells the tale of how we work. But anything that comes to your mind in that regard?
Well, there's a certain foreign language bill that always comes to mind when I want to talk about.
That would be the one.
One of my early experiences in the General Assembly, one of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle had put forth a bill that would allocate money and require that the General Assembly's website not just be in English, but also be in Spanish. And
this was during the budget crisis when we were, social services were being hurt and a bunch of other things. So there certainly was a financial issue. But of course, being the problem solver Keith Wheeler is, how did you problem solve this?
Well, I have an IT background, so I was playing with some different tools that I have in my tool chest there. Back before we had iPhones that have as much power as they have now, and I was literally running the General Assembly's website through a translation tool in multiple languages live.
Which, by the way, was free.
Which was free, which is not $1.5 million a year, but rather free for like 67 different languages instead of 1. So I got up and I gave a speech. Actually, no, that's not the best part. The best part was this. Mark comes over to my desk, and we weren't sitting right by each other at the time. But Mark's come over, and he says, he's ranting and raving that this is a bad idea at a bad time. And he's not wrong. So I said, well, here's what I'm thinking. And I showed him what I had. I had the entire General Assembly's website up in Polish, because I knew that one of my one of my favorite colleagues on the other side of the aisle had a large Polish constituency in his backyard.
Good idea.
And let's let him know.
He was actually the original sponsor of the bill, by the way, before he handed it off. But
right.
Go ahead.
Exactly. So Mark does something that's really beyond protocol on the Illinois House floor, which was he pushed my speak button for me, and then he walked away, which you can't do. That's
and here's what I thought. I'm like, oh, this is great. Keith has problem solved this. Everybody's going to be thrilled. I'm like, I hit his speak button. I walk away. What he didn't know was I was telling everybody there was a list of people talking. And this is what was happening during the budget crisis. The speaker loved this. Madigan loved this because what he would do is he would call a bill like this up and get us arguing for 2 hours of something that was not even crumbs isn't the easiest way to make it look like we're doing something about the budget. And all he was doing was passing time and getting us worked up and getting one team against the other team. This is a perfect Madigan play. Put a bill like this up on the board so that we can argue. And leadership on their side actually got involved. So I hit a speak button. I walk away. I start telling everybody, wait till Keith talks, wait till Keith talks, wait till Keith talks. And there's a board where you can see who's lit up to speak. And there was like 10, 20 people. So I knew it was going to be a while. So I'm going to all the other reps, Democrats and Republicans. And we go, wait till, I'm just waiting for it. So I sit down. They finally say, Representative Wheeler, why do you rise and tell your part of the story? So
I got up and I literally picked up my laptop and I asked a couple questions to the sponsor, which is my typical way to kind of warm things up. And then I said, I'm looking at the website in Spanish right now, and I can see the entire thing's been translated. All the bills are translated. All the bios are. And then I flipped it over literally in 1 second, and back to Polish again. And I'm walking through there, and I don't know enough Polish to say I can order some food in Poland, but that's about all I can do. And I explained this is free, and this is something we can do today, and then I would be sending people links that they could use in their own websites today for their constituents if they have a certain, ethnic group that they think would benefit from that. They could put it on their sites tomorrow, and I did. The next morning, I literally emailed that to the entire General Assembly. But the bill sponsor had a very sour look on her face, as you may recall, Mark, and then we had to come in and bail things out because they weren't pleased with this approach.
Well, now you're being nice. You're being nice. What happened? So he gets up and he gives this really logical. Here's how we solve this problem without spending any money. The debate got worse.
Oh my gosh!
We were literally called something to the effect of, I'm probably paraphrasing, racist. That we didn't want to translate this, and one of their members was told that leadership said you need to get up and bail her out and start attacking us on this bill. So somebody just got up on the other side and started attacking. Once again, they were pitting us against each other, and they did this. And all of a sudden it gets, and I'm like, my mouth is open, my eyes are wide open. I'm just looking. I couldn't believe it. So I hit my speak light, and by that time I've lost it, and I've got to wait. I've got to wait like 10, 15 minutes in order for me to speak. And I got up and I just basically started yelling. I go, I don't get it. We found a free solution. I go, we can translate it into Polish, into Portuguese, and Arabic, and actually
Italian.
Tim Mapes points to Representative DeLuca's Italian. He points to him as I'm giving this rant, and I go, Italian, because he's Italian. And I ended it with, we should all have. Why should we be upset about a free bipartisan solution? We should all have a kumbaya and a beer. And I slammed my mic down. And one or two speakers later, it went to the vote, and it failed by like 1 or 2 votes. Right? It failed by 1 or 2 votes. I'm walking out of the Capitol, and I don't remember who it was. Somebody said, "Hey man," slapped me in the back, said, "Let's go have a kumbaya and a beer." And then another person said, I was like, what's this kumbaya and a beer stuff? I didn't know what they were talking about. And then I realized I had said it.
You said it.
And one of the most interesting things that you'll find as you'll have something really planned out, some speech that you think you've nailed, you've got it all worked out. This is going to be home. This is going to be press. That they're going to eat this. You get nothing out of it. You'll do something off the cuff, and then all of a sudden it was the quote of the day in the Tribune. Was the quote of the day?
Kumbaya and a beer.
Kumbaya and a beer. So
that's awesome. You're listening to Policy Nuance. This is State Representative Mark Batinick from the 97th District, and his guest here today, State Representative Keith Wheeler from Oswego. We're going to continue on with this really interesting insight as to what really happens down. But Deb's got a quick update for us on a few things. Do you not, Debbie?
I do. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone that came out for incredible Kids Free Expo last week. We had over 1,500 moms, dads, grandma, grandpas, kids, everybody. It was great.
I think
was
people were happy to
perfect.
be outside. Yeah,
It was absolutely, and thank you to all the people that came out. We had so many people that, all the townships, all the touch-a trucks, all the different organizations. But a couple things that are coming up, and this is always very popular. I know it's very popular in your office, Representative, as well. The prescription drug drop-off is going to be happening Saturday, October 9th from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Again, that's the prescription drug drop-off, Saturday, October 9th, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Plainfield Police Department. And after that, we have our college financial aid FAFSA workshop. This is a huge event for all of us that have kids that are heading off to college. And it's not only a workshop, it is also like it's not just a financial aid seminar, it's a workshop. You bring your computers, you work through all this, you apply with the help of the FAFSA team, which is huge because it's not an easy adventure.
People need that help
to fill this out. Yeah. So those are two things that are coming up. Those are on our website, repbatinick.com. All the information's there.
Well, speaking of JCAR and kind of Illinois State Board of Education, they actually issued some new rules regarding COVID. And I don't know, it's a lot. In fact, I'm doing a seminar right after the show with Jennifer Bertino's putting on I guess it's a webinar. Mm-hmm. COVID numbers are trending well in the area, really well. I think we're down to somewhere near the positivity rate is somewhere in the 4% range, which means the case rate is probably even less than that because positivity is people can be tested multiple times.
Sure.
So we're actually in pretty good shape. It was literally breaking as we were doing the show last week that the new rules were coming out. They certainly changed the quarantine rules. I think they call it change from quarantine to exclusion or some word like that because they're not allowed to quarantine. But what's important here is they're implementing the test to stay. And one of the things that I've hit ad nauseum from the first show is how important it is to keep the kids in school. I mean, you look at the violence in Chicago, the number of kids who have been shot at like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning on a school night, that if it was a regular school day the next day, maybe they would be in bed waiting to go to school as opposed to out on the street. So the new guidance, I'm pretty excited about. I'm happy that we've been in school, almost a month and a half in most areas here, pretty close to a month and a half. And if anything, you've seen the positivity rate has gone down. So kind of that first wave that everybody was worried about with the spread at the schools hasn't really happened yet. Now we're kind of waiting for that fall flu season wave, which is kind of the second thing, but have to keep kids in school. So some of the new things you can test to stay. So if you're exposed, there's a test to stay. If you test negative, it's not 7 days, which they were doing 10 to 14 in some of the school districts around here now. So I think that's
This is on your website too.
Yeah, all this is on my website. I have a link to all the all the new schools. Do you think JCAR will take up anything with that, Keith?
It's a good question. Oftentimes, we don't necessarily know the answer to what's going to take up in JCAR until 2 or 3 days beforehand because things are still somewhat malleable as far as these emergency rules can be amended by the agencies themselves as they get pushed back on things from us and from others. So we're definitely going to talk about them in our briefing meeting ahead of time. But we're still going to be, I think, primarily focused on the mask mandate itself as far as why that's not policy and rule instead of outside rule.
Yeah, and I've talked about this before, and this plays into JCAR, and this plays huge, and I'm having a hard time understanding what the reluctance is. So there's what do people think of Johns Hopkins? Anybody think that's a reliable source? Everybody?
I do.
Yeah. I do. So we've got Marty McCary is a professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and Bloomberg School of Public Health, editor-in-chief of MedPage Today. That's another thing I draw from MedPage Today. I'll pull out the actual obviously, a lot of the times I'm linking articles, but whenever I can find the actual study, I like putting the study up, like I put up the Israeli study, the actual study there, and I think that was on MedPage Today. So he's a pretty reliable source, and he wrote. I just love this. I love the title of this article. Natural immunity to COVID is powerful. Policymakers seem afraid to say so. So I've looked at it. There's kind of a gold, silver, bronze of protection. The bronze is the vaccine. The silver is somebody who's previously been infected. And then the gold is you've been previously infected and you've had the vaccine.
I'll buy that.
But what's been frustrating, whether it be with the schools, whether it be employers who are requiring the vaccine or whatnot, that there isn't any nuance to this, especially with the kids in schools. They're treating the kids who have been previously infected as if they have no immunity whatsoever, when in fact their immunity is better than the kids who have been vaccinated. So there was a school in the city. I've talked about it on the show previously. It's linked under a different article. They had three cases in the whole school of COVID. So the entire school was shut down for 14 days.
Wow.
14 days. Now they were letting, if you were vaccinated, they were letting those kids stay. My question is, why weren't they letting the kids stay that have proof of antibodies? Right? And the policymakers, these are the things you start having. What's troublesome about the world we live in right now is you start having a conversation like this. And I've been attacked on both sides of this issue, especially when I'm having a conversation like this. It's everybody wants to be the extreme of that. They want to accuse. There's the camp of the 100% do nothing, anti-vax, do nothing, no mask, no nothing, and then there's the kind of the group that wants to shut. Those are the two loud groups. The group that want to shut it down. In fact, I had a petition sent to me. 500 people signed it that they wanted to keep the kids out of school because of the pandemic, which I appreciate it. And I appreciate the concern, and it probably means we're not doing a good enough job as as leaders, as the media, to talk about just the math of the difference between the effects on children and older, and more importantly, the effects of kids not being in school. So we had a little bit, the audible we called. My wife is a special ed teacher, probably going to have her on the show next week during her lunch break next week, just to talk about, there is a downside to kids not being in school, and what she's seeing, and we'll get into this a lot more. The kindergartners and first graders are really behind, and you're really seeing even then a big difference between certain kids, right? And I've talked about the fact that, hey, if need be, I can afford a tutor. Right, the 2-parent household, middle income, upper income. Well, heck, a lot of the upper income people have just said we're sending our kids to private schools that are open.
Yeah.
So when you talk about that education gap that leads to an income gap, it just gets exacerbated. And one of the most important things to me is keeping the kids in school. I mean, I've been a big proponent. I get attacked for liking many of the mitigations that the governor has put in, because I think we've needed mitigations, and there's things that we should have done. But then on the other side, I think we need to be nuanced on kind of moving it back and forth. To that end, there's a Michigan State, and I think I've linked this as well on the Facebook page. There's a Michigan State lawsuit, which I think might ferret this out and settle it a little bit. There's an employee that says, I have the antibodies. I can prove I have the antibodies. So why am I being treated as if I...
Are they firing up there too? Are they firing them?
I think that's the... I believe that's the gist. I believe that's the gist or the threat. So there's certainly a difference between the unvaccinated. Look, what you're able to do in the public sphere is different than what a private company can do. A private company has a lot more legal latitude in what they can do. But from a making sense standpoint, from a science standpoint, I don't know why we're ignoring the natural immunity. Man, especially for kids who've had it and aren't eligible to get the vaccine yet, and they're being I mean, I've heard stories of kids who have had it, who've had to stay home from school when that's not what the that's kind of...
I'm glad you brought this up, because I don't think it's getting enough attention. And the fact that this has gone well. The first 6 weeks or 7 weeks has gone really, really well. So why isn't that being talked about?
I don't know. And the one thing I said in July that I've been consistent throughout, here we are almost into October, when I talked to administrators when they said no to the mask mandate, my statement to the letter to the governor that I wrote about a month ago, my statement to people who called, let's put metrics in now. Things are calm. Let's put metrics in now. Let's have an all-in mentality where it's a situation where it's like, hey, when the rates go up, when it's bad, based on whatever metric, you're going to take more precautions, and then we're going to lift those precautions when things are going better. The frustration that I'm getting right now is that there's no end game. That this is just going. That this is just and they're like, and what I see, depending on where I go downstate. Man, when I went to Springfield for maps, right? We had to revote on maps. When I went to Springfield for that, I had a big blowout with my tire, and I ended up having to go to 3 or 4 tire stores and some other stuff. Nobody was following the rules, and
not down there. They're not.
But long term, even here, I'm seeing schools are different. It's easier to enforce them there, but I'm seeing things slip. It's easier to enforce the rules if they're buying and people think they make sense, right? And it's easier for somebody to get on TV and say, "Here's the numbers. Here's what it says. When it's raining outside, you wear an umbrella. When it's sunny outside, you don't wear an umbrella." And if you almost feel like it's sunny outside and I'm being told I need to wear an umbrella. Right. And the other part that I'll shift to on that one is the N95. Some of my concern is the not understanding of the purpose. The purpose of the mask is to protect others. And if you are really concerned about yourself, you should be wearing an N95. Mm-hmm. And we're not at the point right now where N95s are as scarce as they were, right? A year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, we were worried about PPP for the nursing home I was just at. I haven't even posted that picture yet, but I walked around in a nice fitting, tight N95 mask for about an hour, and I was actually shocked because I hadn't worn one in a long time. I was actually shocked. I don't know if it actually, the way it fit, might have actually been more comfortable than the surgical mask that I normally have to wear. But if you're concerned about protection for yourself, the N95 mask is actually the way to go. And I wish I saw it. I know of people who have a higher concern about it, and if they're really looking at the science of it, I think it might be time to shift. It might be time to shift to like, hey, for the immunocompromised, for the older folks, you need to protect yourself. And I think Leader Durkin talked about the N95, writing about N95 masks to the governor in his letter before my letter about maybe doing something from a state standpoint in terms of using some of the dollars to buy people who want the N95 masks, because they're a couple bucks a piece, I think.
Sounds right. I think they're about $3 a piece, but still, I don't know. I think I think we have to shift, and there has to be buy-in from the public, and people have to believe in what we're doing and why we're doing it. Well, the fact that there's no metrics that we're using for these things is really frustrating. Some of us who backed what the governor was doing a year ago based on the fact that there were metrics.
Right.
Okay, we said, okay, here's a fair way to play the game.
I defended some of those metrics.
I had to defend you after that.
Yeah, exactly. But you looked at a dashboard, you saw the rate go up, you saw the rate go down.
Yeah, it was 6.5 and 8%, remember?
Right.
And so we even did it on our website. I remember seeing what it was at 20%. And then we just kept, and then as soon as it got down to about 3, we took it off because people weren't interested anymore because it was mission accomplished.
Right. And it's I'll just go back to the umbrella story. I think if we had metrics that made sense, we said, okay, we're relaxing it now. If you're immunocompromised, switch to the N95. I think if we had metrics, because we're probably in that 2 to 3% range for case rate now, whatever you decide to put it at, I think that would be a more practical approach that would get more buy-in and create more of a team mentality. So,
and that percentage too, that's not percentage of our population. That's
correct.
Percent of the people that test.
Correct.
That's something else people just don't understand.
Right. And sometimes, Keith and I live and breathe this stuff. Literally, but and he has to hear me talk about it all the time down in Springfield. But it's a lot for people to absorb and have to do that. We're actually starting to get short on time. I can't even let Deb do another awesome commercial, but I do want to get to some of her questions because I know some are COVID related, and then I want to play If I Were Gov.
Okay.
To wrap this up.
This is from Angela, and she's got 2 questions. Election integrity, that really is coming across our emails constantly. What about Illinois audit? What about election integrity?
So there's
25 of these today.
I did a clip on an earlier show, and I might have to do another quick clip. The thing that bothers me is we don't have a system for cleaning the voter rolls. When we did the vote by mail application sent to everybody, we found out that there was a lot of people who were getting applications who hadn't lived in the county for a long time. And so I actually filed the bill to fix that.
Me too.
I didn't know you did that. Put me on as a sponsor. The other part is we talk about whenever there's voting expansion, it seems to work to favor one party, and I don't think that's the way to go. So I filed 2 pieces of legislation. There'll be a press release coming out soon on the latest bill, probably with an op-ed. So we're certainly
Put me on that bill.
So you certainly, you know about that bill.
Kumbaya on the beer.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know. This one may be loaded too. You've referred to it, but what about the people that do not want the COVID for whatever reasons they're experiencing? They cannot get the vaccine. That is a lot of questions that we're getting in the office.
Yeah, obviously, it's going to be a case by case. It's going to be a case by case scenario. There's certainly a difference between public and private. A private employer is going to have obviously more latitude than a public employer, and I'll really point to this is where I really get if I saw some middle ground on the natural immunity, that it really bothers me that we're not taking that into play, and it leads people to believe that the policymakers aren't following the science, the term that they like to use. So I know we got just a couple minutes left, so I got a couple. You might have to leave out a couple of the long ones for next week.
Yeah.
Let's get into If I Were Gov for a day.
Yeah, you only got a couple minutes. Let's do that.
I'm going to go real quick. If I were Gov, I'm going to go back to my letter. If I were Gov for a day, I'd put up metrics. I would talk about it. I'll be proud of the fact that I would reward the areas of the state that have seen things go down. I would do the math based on metrics, and I would really start pushing the N95 for the immunocompromised. I don't think that's been talked about enough because I don't see a lot of that out there. So if I was Gov for a day, that's what I would do. And there's other things I would do if nobody else has any ideas of what they would want to do if they were Gov for a day.
Representative
All right, there we go. What are you doing? What do you want to do?
If I was Gov for a day?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Bears for a second here.
We may not agree on this one. And by the way, you get to be the Gov for a day, not this Gov for a day, so doesn't come with the billions of dollars. Being this
wait
Gov.
A second. You can't buy the team. No. I just want to change the offensive coordinator approach right now on the plays.
On a lighter note.
Let's keep it a little lighter.
That's a good answer. How about Scott? You got anything?
I do have one, actually. I brought this up today. We heard, and you guys know all the details. I don't. The governor wants to go after gun makers, go after them hard, and hammer them. I would rather go after the people using those guns, shooting other people, instead of letting them out on bail.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
We got an article on that. That's Scott's might be better than mine. I'm tired of people being tough criminals being let out and then killing people again.
Kim Fox and other people like that, absolutely.
I had, and this is what, going back to tourism and violence, I had somebody contact me, daughter, University of Iowa, visited a friend from Iowa, visited a friend in Oak Park, went into the city, got beat up really bad, some bad, concussions and stuff, will never come back to the city of Chicago. She was out from beating up somebody else a few weeks earlier.
Oh
right?
my gosh!
That actually was one of the questions that someone sent you. What about?
Yeah, we got to be tougher on people like that.
Yep, we do. We're out of time, guys.
Been a great show. I appreciate Scott, Debbie, Keith. I appreciate y'all coming in.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And I'm
Enjoyed it.
jumping around, and the rumpus and rock.